And we're back.
We are back. Booze in hand. Made myself a little cocktail at the break. Don't judge me. I do it all the time.
Can you believe this is his first?
Did you use Jew blood for grenadine again?
For the love of... Yes.
I think Luke likes this meme a little too much.
Oh, maybe.
Do you do this at home, too?
Oh, no, at home we just go at it.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Well, don't... phrasing.
Yes, Archer?
Phrasing.
Anyway, let's go back into it with, you know what? People always go...
Go back and do it with who, exactly?
Why don't you two go back into it?
Yes.
We're going back into it with anime, and I tell you this because a lot of people go, Cyrus hates anime. First off, I have never, ever, ever once ever said, except in a making fun of you guys saying that sense, that I hate anime, because I certainly don't.
I have never said publicly that I hate anime.
My
name is Cyrus.
There's a lot of the films that I absolutely love and have said so many times. I'm a biggest Hayao Miyazaki fan I know, but I can't bring myself to sit and watch the long television shows. I just don't have the time, and I can't fit in all the stuff I already know that I like.
You know what, Cyrus? I will take some of the heat off of you. I do hate anime.
Do you?
So, it's true. I've tried several different titles, including Miyazaki. I just can't get into this shit.
Does nothing for you at
It
all?
really doesn't. And it's not one of those things that I have gotten to the point where I just tune out entirely. But it's just... It never grabs... Even Akira, which is supposed to be, I know, one of the great...
That's one of
Holy
my
God,
favorite
Akira
movies.
sucks ass.
What?
All right.
Are you crazy? You're a crazy person is what
No,
you are.
I'm really
Further
not.
taking the
Akira's
heat
a
off me
piece
is
of
Luke Mullen.
shit.
Oh my
I'll go ahead
God.
and say. I know people love Akira. Akira makes no goddamn
It's the
sense.
exact
And you can't
opposite.
tell me that that's the fucking point of the movie is that it makes no... Akira just fucking does shit for no goddamn reason. That movie's fucking
Akira's
terrible.
the third man of the film. He's not even in it, really. Akira's the thing that happened before the movie happened, that they're all referring to. The character you're thinking of is
No, he's not talking about the character Akira doing things that doesn't make
I
sense.
thought you said he keeps doing stuff.
No, he said Akira
Oh, no,
is
no,
in
no.
the movie.
Akira, the movie,
Oh,
keeps
okay.
doing shit that doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Well,
Anyway.
it made sense to me. So, anyway. That's
That's because you're a crazy person. But I will say, I'm
You
actually...
like how you brought that
just-
full circle.
My feelings on Akira aside, I'm actually kind of in between you two because I don't completely hate all anime. I hate a lot of anime. I hate let me rephrase. I hate shitty anime, and a lot of anime is shitty. And I'm like half and half on Miyazaki. Some Miyazaki stuff I think is really, really cool. Howl's Moving Castle, I was like, alright, yeah, I can see this. Other Miyazaki is like, really? Like, get off the fucking spirit god shit. Like,
See, I adore him. He's one of my favorite creators ever.
oh my god,
easily.
the fucking spirit god shit.
But now what we're going to do is animaze
Obviously,
you.
I'm a dirty hippie, okay?
Anyway, we have a couple of anime titles here that are actually halfway decent.
All right,
So,
and the first one here is Redline. Now, this played at Fantastic Fest, where I did not get to see it when it came out. I believe this was just last year it played, didn't it?
yeah, this is last year.
And it was actually a 2009 sci-fi auto racing film. It's kind of a anime version of Speed Racer in a lot of ways, if you saw the live action movie of that specifically, because it has that same sort
Okay,
of...
because I was going to say, isn't Speed Racer technically an anime? But then I realized you mean the movie.
Yeah, because the movie did not reflect the look of the show, really. At
No,
least
it
as far
reflected
as
the look
way-
of the Wachowskis' id, is what it looked like.
Exactly. And this is kind of like bringing it back to animation,
Speed Racer.
where this kind of look belongs more.
Sure.
Because it's insane. I mean,
Right.
it's all about constantly driving at top speeds and just being as surreal as fucking possible. I mean, imagine... I guess it's kind of like the pod race scene from Phantom Menace if you didn't have to deal with all the annoying Lucasy cutesy shit.
Jake Lloyd
around
wasn't in it? Holy shit, I'm in.
Where it's just like a bunch of weird aliens racing at top speed and
Nice.
and not exploding into stuff with the occasional pair of titties.
Hey, there you go.
No.
Yeah, unfortunately, Brian and I didn't get a chance to see this film, but I heard nothing but good things coming out of Fantastic Fest from people on both sides, people that hate anime and people that don't hate anime. This one seemed to really cross over
Well,
and be appreciated by
Here's the
everyone.
thing about Redline, and it's a way distant future.
Oh my
it's
god, you're gonna
it's
pull that shit again. Cyrus pulls this shit all the time. He's like, well, I know everybody else liked it, but I'm actually smarter
I know,
than them,
I
and
did-
it's shitty.
I did. No, come on now.
I'm just giving you a hard
That's
time.
not cool.
Oh, you know I love you.
I would defend you, but one too many racist jokes. I'm just going to let this one slide.
Fair enough. It's a Cannonball Run story in the sense that it's way futuristic, and all these people who are illicitly getting together for this really famous race that the authorities are constantly trying to shut down, and every character is crazy in their own way, and they're all different alien races, or if they are humans, then it's kind of hard to be sure, because there's so many affectations and cyborg implants and stuff like that going on. And basically, this one character, Sweet JP, has decided that he is he's gonna get into the final, the red line, the top of the top, the final race, no matter what. Even though his previous race, I think it was the yellow line, he is injured to the point of almost dying. And we see the fact that his own manager is the one who set up an explosive in his car so as he wouldn't win the race, and the guy he's working for secretly would win a bunch of money from betting.
My manager set up the bomb. Ha ha.
Exactly.
By the way, Sweet JP is my cousin's pimp name.
So when he gets into Redline by default, because when they announce that they're going to have it on this planet that is a robot-run planet that has said decisively, any of those racers come there, we will kill them. They are not welcome on this planet. We will nuke you. Then a lot of the racers die out, or drop out. They go.
Wait, so they tell them you can't race here, we'll kill you, and that's where they decide to have the race?
Yeah. Because the whole thing is it's ultra violent. It's like Twisted Metal type stuff because they've got missiles and weapons and all kinds of shit. So some of the racers drop off, and Sweet JP gets in, and so most of the movie is actually them fucking around on this planet and eventually, and training for the race while avoiding the authorities, and then eventually the race itself. Now that being said, it's really not much of a story at all. Like, you have barely any idea about anything. Yeah, right. About anything that's going on about any of these characters or who they are. I mean, it is the bare bones of a story. But visually, it's absolutely jaw-dropping. This is all hand-drawn, first off. I mean, wow. And it is gorgeous.
Yeah, I can imagine if you're animating something that's moving at that high a speed and you're doing it all by hand, that's got to be pretty painstaking.
It took them quite a while to make it, apparently. I don't tell you, it's one of those films that you go, yes, you probably should be inebriated to some degree when you watch it, so you won't be caring about what's in the plot. You can just go, let it wash over you, because it's non-stop insanity to look at, and it's so beautiful, but there's no depth to it on any level. I mean, it is the just surface level entertainment dream of a film.
Huh. Well, I mean, it's and I shouldn't have declared my distaste for anime on the show when I haven't seen the titles we're talking about, because immediately that's the argument is, well, you haven't seen the right stuff. And I feel like I've seen a lot of the quote classic titles, a lot of the Miyazaki and Akira and Ninja Scroll and a lot of the stuff that people swear by. And it's just something about it. There is the occasional title, like actually another Fantastic Fest movie from way before. It was Korean, actually, so I don't know if it still qualifies as anime.
Achi and Shipok.
Oh, I love that, yeah.
Which is such a weird, part of the reason I like it is it has a lot of the anime stuff going on, a lot of the weird, inexplicable things.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of making fun of itself the whole way, and it makes a lot of references to American movies, and it makes fun of America, and
Achi and Shipok is a great
It's an animated film, but I wouldn't call it an anime.
Okay,
I
don't know where
share much in common with those styles or those or the techniques from anime.
I never know where the actual dividing line is.
I didn't feel that at all.
I thought most of the roads races had a lot in common with Japanese anime, but
I don't know.
Maybe that's just me.
I didn't feel the same connection, especially not with the character design.
No, the character design is definitely more cartoony, but I think the road there's a lot of stuff that takes place on the road because there's a group of bandits that are robbing people on the roads, and
it's a lot like
a lot of motorcycle racing.
It's a lot like Road Warrior if instead of gasoline it was people's shit that they were after.
God, that is the plot of Achi and Shipok really, really quickly is that the world has had their fossil fuel crisis, and they've decided that they've figured out this scientific way to create energy from feces, and so the most important and valued members of society are now the people who shit the most, which is
I would be a goddamn
awesome.
King.
The metaphors draw themselves in that.
Well, when
universe.
I heard the description of it, I did not want to see it actually because I went, really, it's a whole movie
it sounds
around
so
a
childish.
poop joke.
It really does.
And
sound
then it's
childish.
funny as fuck all the way through.
Yeah.
It's so wildly creative, and honestly, that's a good film to bring up in comparison with Redline because they both have that sense of just non-stop shit going on where you're not even sure what's happening, but you sure are and having fun watching it play out anyway. But Redline, if you're even mildly an anime fan, it's going to be a must-see because of the nature of it being all hand-drawn.
And I will say this, any anime movie that plays Fantastic Fest, I will, if I don't catch it at the festival, I will track down and watch because I know, a lot of there's a lot of people that help program Fantastic Fest, and they don't all love anime.
Yeah.
There's a lot of very different taste sets in that group. So I feel like if an anime movie gets to play Fantastic Fest, it's got to have something more than just what you traditionally see.
Well,
yeah,
we put a certain amount of trust in Fantastic Fest
Oh, sure.
after all the years
You're
going.
damn
so
right we do.
We worship at the altar of Fantastic Fest, and we're not ashamed of it.
I'm not ashamed to admit that often I don't necessarily agree with their top picked films, though. They'll like the films they go, these are the ones we're most proud of. I go, yeah, I really didn't think that was all that great. And then the stuff that got shuffled, like, yeah, you can see that if you want, is always the stuff that's like, wow, that was fucking great.
And that's what's great about it, because, Tim League is a weird dude, and he's got very weird tastes. And
we all have weird tastes.
My God, does he?
He does, and sometimes you're just like, what the fuck, Tim? But then you're right, like those other films that are like shuffled into the mix, you're like, oh, this is really awesome.
Look, any festival that programs 60 films, there are going to be 10 you don't like.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, most festivals, it's more like half.
It's more the other way around, where it's like, you'll see 10 you like.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so moving on, the other anime title here is a film that is a Russian-Japanese joint animation product called First Squad.
Yet another film that also played Fantastic
now,
Fest.
see, I wasn't sure about that because I couldn't find a reference specifically, but as I was watching this, I'm like, I know I've seen this before.
Yeah, it played 3 years ago, I think, and for whatever reason they could only play it once, and it was opening day, and it was at like 4 o'clock opening day.
Then I did see it because I didn't even realize till I started watching this. I'm like, I know I've seen this somewhere, and I wasn't.
Because I saw it at Fantastic
I thought the only
Fest.
place it could have been I had seen it was Fantastic Fest. But the story takes place the opening days of World War II with a bunch of Russian teenagers who have sort of limited psychic abilities and extreme physical capacity for violence, who have a special unit to fight the Germans, only they get killed immediately right in the beginning.
Like you do.
And only one of them survives, a young girl named Nadia. And the Nazis are invading Russia, and Russia doesn't know what to do about it. And the Nazis have got themselves found this ancient sword that belonged to this knight warrior who presumably is a racist as well, but they don't really get into that. It's Brian Salisbury!
I was waiting. I was like, okay, I heard the word Nazi, and I'm just waiting for somebody to drop my
come back
name.
around to you. A 12th century Order of the Sacred Cross, that they're going to bring these supernatural knights back from the dead to fight versus the Russians. And even though they have a physical effect, the Russians can't even see them. So, wow, kind of a shitty enemy. So the Russians figuring out this is going on, get this girl Nadia, and they send her into the afterlife via a special machine to recruit her dead friends to come back and help them fight these Nazis. Now,
if it sounds batshit insane, it's because it is, but it's also pretty awesome.
It is pretty awesome. The one thing I'll say about this that I didn't like, and this is my own fault for not doing my research first, there are two ways you can watch this film. There's an extended version and a
High
regular
or
version.
sober?
And the extended version is only about 12 minutes longer, but it includes a bunch of live action like talking head interviews.
Okay, because that's the version we saw.
Yeah, that you can totally do without.
Oh, okay.
There's a point where I was like, these don't really have anything to do. Like, they're not helping the story along.
I did think it was really
They're
weird.
just
I
breaking
remember
it up.
thinking it was really, really strange. Like,
Yeah.
because it cuts from anime to like present day interview footage, and you're just like,
What?
Well, they're trying to give you the
fuck?
presentation as if, oh, this is something that really happened, and now here's all these historians talking about it. But they're talking
which
about
is
it in
kind
such
of a cool idea.
well,
but-
it is, but they talk about it in such a vague and general way that, and they're not helping the story move along at all. It just breaks up.
And it's already a short movie.
It's a very short
And,
film.
and to be really honest, as much as I enjoy it, it's another one of those movies that kind of feels like the first two acts of a movie.
Yeah.
Or at least to me.
Well, it ends on that point, like we expect it to go next week on First Squad.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. And frankly, but though I will say I liked it enough that if they decided to make a sequel, I'd be interested in seeing it. I liked
would
enough
too.
of what I saw.
I was disappointed when we got to the end that was indeed it.
Yeah.
I felt like it was missing a good 30 minutes. At least
that's that thing called the third act.
Yeah.
A lot of indie films seem to be doing that these days. They're like, you know what, we're just gonna put 2 acts of a movie up, and some people just seem to give all those movies a pass, and that really bothers me. I'm like,
Well, it
when
depends
did
on-
that become okay?
It depends on how good those first 2 acts are, but I'm always going to call film on it if they do that blatantly. Like Carnage, that was my problem with that movie. It was like, wow, that just kind of ended right at the beginning, right before the third act started.
I don't know. I mean, I guess with Carnage, that didn't particularly bother me with Carnage, but I mean, any movie that you can tell blatantly, like, without any pre-knowledge of the film whatsoever, when you're just watching it, you're like, oh, this was clearly a stage play that they've decided to film. Like, I automatically kind of throw everything out the window because it's not a movie. Like,
Yeah, because the
you're
original,
because what you're essentially doing is filming a stage play,
the original,
and that's fine.
The original
but-
play of First Squad was so much better. I mean, when you actually see,
Well, without the interview footage, when it was just animation on stage, that's when it really took off.
when you see the actors as the commie ghosts fighting versus the Nazis from the 12th century with the whole both armies in between.
Spoiler
on
alert:
stage.
Paranormal 4 is about commie ghosts, so
It was pretty impressive.
So that was Carnage.
better dead in red. Better dead in red.
No, that was First Squad.
No,
And
those are two very, very decent animes.
And very
Even if
different.
you're not, and very different. And if you're not an anime fan, give one or both of those a shot.
Yeah, they're different from the norm.
I will.
You better.
You would like First Squad, I feel. I haven't seen Redline, so I can't speak to that. But I think you'd like First Squad.
Like I said, Redline is that film that you put in when you might be getting a little bit tired, you've come home from the bars, you're still too drunk to go to sleep, and you go, well, let's put in something to watch,
And it
and that
assaults
shit
your
will
eyeballs.
wake you the fuck up.
How is it sunrise already? What's happening?
Yeah, well, we've...
You feel like you're hanging out with Robin Williams in the
What,
late 80s.
what have you been doing? I was mainlining Redline.
All right, so what do we got next, Brian?
I'm going to jump to a decidedly older film in The Apartment by Billy Wilder.
Oh, I love this movie so much.
And this is a movie that, again, one that I only discovered in preparation for this show, and I am totally in agreement with you. I fucking love The Apartment.
It's funny, this is with Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine. For one thing, this did for me. I always thought of Shirley MacLaine before as being, oh, that's that crazy new age lady.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, to me, that when I grew up, that's who she was. I wasn't watching a bunch of Shirley MacLaine films. I was like, yeah, she's like that crazy.
Do you have, by any chance, have you seen the movie Gambit with her and Michael Caine?
I have not.
I love
But I've
Gambit
heard it's great.
so much.
Like, I'm completely on board with you because when I watched Gambit, I thought that same thing. Like, Shirley MacLaine, I don't know. But she was amazing
She's
in that movie.
adorable.
And she really is so sweet and so cute. And in this, she's exactly, and even more so in this.
Yeah, and,
Yeah, definitely
and
more so.
Jack Lemmon, who's always
Much
been
so
one of
I
my
like Gambit.
favorite actors ever, this is the movie he considered to be the best film he ever made, as well as Billy Wilder, the director, who's often
Well, it's such a
referred
great
to
pairing
as-
of talent.
Yeah, and they worked together quite a bit. They were on Some Like It Hot, for instance, which is
Right.
which is I believe what AFI's #1 funniest movie. Although I don't agree with that assessment.
Well,
It's still funny, very
yeah.
funny film. But The Apartment is a story where Jack Lemmon is C.C. Baxter. He's a lonely office drone for an insurance company. He wants to climb the corporate ladder, but he has no backbone of any kind. And he basically is letting 4 managers around the office use his apartment anytime they want so they can sleep with their mistresses there.
Right.
Which is...
Which is kind of an awesome idea and really kind of blatant for the 60s.
Yeah, you know what I mean? That was one thing that really surprised me about The Apartment is how kind of sexually liberated it was. And not that that wasn't the case at the time, but it's not something you find in movies of the time very often. Like,
It doesn't
he literally,
feel like it.
He literally was just like, he would get a call. One of his bosses would be like, hey, I've got a date. I need to use the apartment. Basically, I need to use the apartment. Get out.
Yeah.
So he would leave the apartment for 45 minutes to an hour, depending on, and then he would come back. And this is how he made an impression with the higher-ups. And that was his plan to eventually get promoted.
Always being told, don't worry, your time will come. Your time will come. Well, his time finally comes when the Uber boss, the overboss, played by Fred McMurray, says, I've got this new thing called Flubber. No, he doesn't. He says...
And he's like, I want to come now.
He, through a long way of dancing about the topic, he eventually reveals, yes, I know about this apartment, and I want to start using it. And if you do that for me, and you keep it absolutely quiet, then I promise you have a promotion literally right around. I mean, we'll talk right now about the kind of promotion.
Which is so much more heinous for him because he's a huge family man. He's got 3 sons.
Yeah, he's got a big family.
There it is. My 3 sons jokes, everybody.
Yeah.
Good night.
None of our fans have seen that.
No,
show.
they haven't at all. The 2 of you that got that joke hate it, so you're welcome.
But the problem lays in the situation when Jack Lemmon, who has got a real crush on an elevator operator in the office, played by Shirley MacLaine, who is just so adorable you just want to wrap her
She's
up
like a
and
little
take her
gidget.
home.
Like,
yeah, totally. It turns out she's the one having the affair with the boss.
Yeah.
So
Oh, shit!
Love
wackiness
triangle
ensues.
Yeah.
And one of the great things about this film is it's not a screwball comedy at all.
No.
It's in fact kind of a dramedy, really. There's points that are very dark in this film.
Well, one of the things that struck me is early in the movie, he gets a call late and he has to go out and it's raining and he ends up giving himself like a really bad cold in service of these people that want to use his apartment. Like it's fun. It's such a weird message about what it takes to succeed in business, because he's working so hard and sacrificing so much, and yet he's not working that hard at his actual job.
Yeah.
Like, he's doing all these things and making all these sacrifices to move up, but he's not actually trying to impress anyone with his work.
Well, it's funny is he is, but that's not what's impressing them, because you remember he always stays late at work, but it's only because those guys always want to use the apartment.
Yeah.
So he's like, I might as well just stay and keep working, because where else am I going to go?
Yeah.
And you think that alone would be where his Uber boss would go, wow, this guy stays late every night.
Right, but then there's that scene where like somebody's harping on him because they couldn't get him on the phone for 20 minutes, and the reason they couldn't get him on the phone is because he was trying to juggle all these guys' schedules to get them all times booked in his apartment to sleep with their mistresses. So it's like it's working against him in a lot of ways, and yet he keeps doing it.
Now, keep in mind, this film won Best Picture at the Oscars, Best Director for Billy Wilder, Best Screenplay for Billy Wilder and IAL Diamond, Best Art Direction and Set Direction, Best Film Editing, and it was nominated for pretty much everything else. I mean, it was very well received, but kind of controversial at the time, because you just didn't talk about things this openly as they do in this film. That being said, it's not a film that's trying to say something really important either. I mean, it is and it isn't. It has a message, but that's not its point. Its main point is to entertain, and it does so amazingly well. Like I said, the chemistry between all these actors is just on fire in this film, and I really think that this is the best that Jack Lemmon has ever been in anything, and that's really saying something.
Absolutely.
And it was also my first time seeing it, and that's ridiculous. It's such a classic film that you've heard about for so many years, and it's one of those things that when you've heard about, especially older films, you always wonder, A, am I going to think it's as good as everybody else thinks it is, and B, is it going to hold up at all? Like, is the comedy going to hold up? Is it still going to be
Is the content still relevant?
Yeah, is it still relevant in any way? And the answer is yes to all of those questions. It's a fabulous film, and I would put it up there with Casablanca as one of those films that will probably be timeless. You know? Its jokes will always be funny. Yes. Its content will always be relevant. There will always be people that cheat on their wives.
There will always be, like, a lot of the jokes are about drinking, which this is one of my favorite things about old movies is they make the best alcoholic jokes.
Yes, they do.
Like, no...
And that's part of what the charm of Casablanca as well.
Casablanca's like that. A lot of the Thin Man. Mm-hmm. I mean, like...
that's all
God, the Thin Man is brilliant. My favorite line in the Thin Man, right at the beginning... When she's like, oh, I guess I have to catch up. What number are you on? And he's like, oh, I'm on number 6. And she goes, waiter, 5 martinis, please. Line them up right here.
Yeah, it's like, but the other thing,
goddamn right you will.
Hell yeah. The other thing that makes The Apartment so relevant is especially if you're somebody who really has a goal in whatever profession you have, and you're willing to make these enormous sacrifices at great personal expense in order to get what you want, and sometimes you feel like you're working against yourself and it's a very lonely situation, that's never going to go away.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where a lot of the drama from this movie comes in, and he's a tremendously lonely guy. And the ironic thing is that his neighbors keep hearing the sounds of amour coming from his apartment and assume he's this womanizer who has a different girl every night, and in reality...
And an alcoholic.
And it's like, it's not even him, like...
He's not drinking. He's not having the sex. He's the whatever the providential scene, I guess, is him sitting at home eating a hastily prepared TV dinner, switching the channels on his TV with his ancient remote.
If you want to get into it on that level, he's the very image of the proletariat being taken advantage of by the bourgeois bosses who literally take advantage of him.
Burn down the Bastille!
Force him to work all the time.
I forgot what we were doing.
But ultimately, the messages, you're right. Any messages that are presented are secondary to the entertainment value, and the entertainment it delivers on that.
I mean, you can look at it as being more important than I think it probably was intended to be. I think if anything, he just wanted audiences to be able to identify with Jack Lemmon's character, like who hasn't felt like they were being taken advantage of by their boss at work. You know, especially if you've ever worked under me. But anyway,
I was gonna say I can sympathize. I think maybe the one thing that doesn't hold up is the fact that he pays $85 a month for his New York City apartment.
Well. Yeah, that is not timeless, in fact. But
no, you hear about that, like, where?
I don't know, but with rent control.
Yeah, you add 2 zeros to that.
There you go.
Maybe that's more like what it is. All right, so let's move on. That was The Apartment.
Oh, one more thing before we move on. The transfer on this, I think, is phenomenal.
Yeah, I thought it looked great, too.
It is gorgeous.
absolutely.
So
agree.
The Apartment, yes, definitely seek it out.
Yeah, I could not agree more. One of the classic films that should be in everybody's like dictionary to be able to bring it up immediately.
Hell yeah.
All-time great comedies, The Apartment.
Definitely something you want to have in your reference pool, even if you don't particularly like it.
Yep. All right, so let's move on to films that I don't think you particularly like, but I absolutely adore.
That is called a fucking segue, folks.
Yes, it is.
Nicely done. We're having a segue war tonight.
I didn't balance too well on it, but you know.
Oh,
there you go.
segue within a segue.
We're talking about Woody Allen's. The two films we talked about earlier we're going to give away, Annie Hall and Manhattan. Now, first of all, we're going to start with Annie Hall. It's a 1977 film, and a lot of people considered this to be his very best work. I don't think it's his very best work, but it's certainly right up there, and it was the film in which the way he was viewed as a director and writer was changed for almost everybody. Because before he was kind of more goofy, more screwball, and this was that kind of change of a film where there was still a lot of really wacky stuff in it, but the story had a lot more serious elements to it, and he actually really had something to say in it. The story follows Alvy Singer, Woody Allen, who's a comedian who's trying to keep up a relationship with his girlfriend Annie, played by Diane Keaton, and it follows over several years with the problems they have, times they break up and get back together, other women that he dates along the way, his jealousness, like at one point she gets involved with Paul Simon, who's not Paul Simon, but he might as well be. He's playing like a musician impresario. Tony Roberts plays his Alan's best friend, who's kind of a pretentious California sitcom star and producer. Carol Kane has a very young and wow, holy shit, she was sexy.
She
Carol
was actually
Kane
really cute, yeah.
As a girl that Woody Allen was dating at one point. Shelley Duvall is in it as another girl. Christopher Walken has absolutely hysterical and very small role in here. There's a lot of people actually who are in here who are huge stars who are only in it for 3 seconds because they were nobody at the time, like Jeff Goldblum and Sigourney Weaver. This is one of those films that there's so many quotable, wonderful lines from. I've loved this ever since I was a kid. And I was worried because I hadn't watched it in years. So when watching it again, I'm like, oh, what if it doesn't hold up? And I like it even better now than I did then.
Well, and this is another one of those situations where I have to be very honest up front in the interest of full disclosure. I've never particularly counted myself a fan of Woody Allen. I don't particularly get into his overly neurotic, tonally uneven kind of... I don't know. There's something about his movies, some of them that I feel are just way too inaccessible if you don't live in New York City and work in like the fast lane of some kind of artistic endeavor. And for me, I don't get into them. However, that being said, I really liked Annie Hall.
Well, Annie Hall is the one that was considered to be the one that is his most accessible for a lot of people. Because, like I said, the humor is a lot more broad.
And that's one of the things I noticed right off the bat. There's this really great scene where he's in line at a movie. And as he and Annie are trying to talk, this guy behind him is just waxing philosophic about Fellini. And it's the most pretentious bullshit. And he just keeps like turning around and like making comments like, can I get a hammer? I want to fucking kill this guy. Yeah. And it's fucking hilarious. And then he steps out of line.
He steps out of the movie.
He steps out of the movie and addresses the audience like, don't you hate that? And then finally he pulls the guy aside and pulls out from behind a curtain the
Marshall McLuhan.
Marshall McLuhan, who he's been talking about, and Woody Allen's like, I don't think you know anything about Marshall McLuhan. He's like, I happen to teach a class at Columbia and blah 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 blah. And he goes, okay, well come here, and he pulls Marshall McLuhan out, and McLuhan goes, you know nothing of my work.
Allen just addresses the audience
because it's the exact type of thing you've wanted to do a million fucking times.
And Allen addresses that immediately, turns the camera and goes, wouldn't it be great if you could actually do this? Yeah. Like, it's a wonderful moment in cinema.
It is. It's great.
And there's a lot of points in Annie Hall where he does, in fact, break that fourth wall. And I think he was one of the very first people in like in a modern film to do that. You know, I if I'm not mistaken, I think there was actually a point very early on in film that it wasn't as uncommon, but I'm blanking a little bit. But regardless, it's one of the most notable examples of it, and it is so funny every time he does it in here. He takes the audience along for the ride in his own like questioning of himself. Am I doing this right? What am I doing wrong? I don't understand. I'm trying to. I just want to be with this girl. Why do I keep screwing up?
Right.
And I like that. I think that's part of why it really works. Now, on the other hand, Manhattan
are we going to go
is also
switch,
a film.
Well, yeah, we're switching. This is Annie Hall. And
okay, so that was Annie Hall. Now we're going to talk.
Now we're talking about Manhattan, which is A film that's also very well respected by him. It is not. People will disagree here. Some people think this is his best film, and it certainly was nominated for a bunch of stuff. I mean, it's treated with great respect, and I absolutely adore this film. I do. But it is Allen being more serious. It's still a comedy, but he's taking Annie Hall and that type of story and that type of character, and he's removed a lot of the more broad humor and made it where, okay, I want to actually talk seriously about this really flawed guy. Now, one complaint I've heard about Manhattan and other films of its ilk from Allen is that people felt like they want you to like this guy exactly how he is, and I never understood why anyone would feel that way. I mean, it's a completely self-recriminating piece about intellectualism and overthinking things and just being flawed as a human and specifically as a man.
Which is why it stars Woody Allen.
Yeah, which is why, Woody Allen here is a guy writing a book about how much he loves New York City. He's a twice divorced television writer who doesn't respect his own job. He doesn't like it. He's dating Mariel Hemingway, who's a super ridiculously hot 17-year-old girl at the time.
Shocking. There.
She was a
prescient, I think.
She was a knockout, and she's so hot here. Allen ends up, despite his convenient relationship with her that he doesn't take seriously either, even though she's desperately in love with him for whatever reason. He ends up falling for a girl played by Diane Keaton that his best friend is having an affair with, is cheating on his wife with. And after the affair falls apart, he ends up sort of leaving Mariel Hemingway for Diane Keaton. Even though the two of them intellectually are constantly at odds, that's what excites him.
Yeah, and the thing is this. I completely understand that I don't have a problem with the fact that he's flawed, and I don't think that the movie is forcing you to like him. However, it is forcing you to spend a lot of time with him, which is really what I have a problem with, because in this movie I find Woody Allen to be
grating,
almost insufferable. And the thing about, I know that there are satires of intellectualism, and I know they try to deconstruct a little bit. My problem is I feel like they cede more ground to the intellectuals than in something like Annie Hall, where it feels more like a pointed criticism of pseudo-intellectuals. I feel like there are so many scenes in this movie where and it's not that, because obviously there are the scenes where it's a satire, but to me it's the scenes that are supposed to be the more personal that have some of the most pretentious shit in the movie.
Oh, see, I don't agree with it being pretentious. I think that, like, while it's a film he wants to make a film for people who are at least somewhat like him to some degree. I mean, he's certainly making it for intellectuals. There's no question that. But that doesn't make a film pretentious.
No,
it just makes it fulfilling a niche.
I don't think the fact that he's making a movie for intellectuals is what makes it pretentious. Obviously, you can't call a movie pretentious just because it's over your head. And I fully admit that there are movies that are way over my head. I don't like his group of friends. I don't like that. It's so hard to put it into words, but there's something about them that grades on me. Just like Luke was saying, it's grating. And
here's what it felt like to me. And granted, I'll be the first to admit I didn't watch the whole thing, so I will not speak to the movie as a whole. But for the first 40 or so minutes, it feels like you spend those 40 minutes with the guy behind Woody Allen in line at the movie from Annie Hall. And fuck that guy. I'm sorry. Like, fuck that guy. Like, it's annoying and it's grating, and it's the type of table that if you were next to them in the restaurant, like the whole scene at Elaine's at the beginning, and God rest her soul, it's the type of thing that if you were at the table next to them, you would ask the waiter to move your table. Like,
it's very,
because you can't stand being near them. And Annie Hall, as great as it was, and I really, really enjoyed Annie Hall, the whole first monologue where he's like starting out the story over again, it was just like, my God, this is gonna be fucking Manhattan again. And thankfully it wasn't, but it's
a very different style of film in a lot of ways in the way that it's told. But I don't have that problem with Woody Allen. If you knew that guy in real life, yeah, he'd irritate you, but we're not watching real life. We're watching this very stylized and exaggerated version of Woody Allen that's in all these films to illustrate his own flaws that he himself can't stand. And it's kind of about exploring those flaws.
And I think he does a great job of communicating that, because I can't stand him either.
But the thing is that ultimately it is a comedy, and I find it funny to watch in that way. I mean, there's lots of characters in famous comedies that everybody loves that you would never actually want to hang out with in real life because they
Right,
would
but
be
they
tiresome as
They
hell.
don't grate on me as I'm watching it.
Well,
I think
know,
it's the
and
difference.
It's just this just comes down to whether or not you find
Yeah.
that type of Woody Allen humor funny. And
Yeah.
I do get why a lot of people don't. I do. I totally understand. I cannot criticize you at all. If you don't find it funny, you don't find it funny.
Well, I was
What are you
actually
gonna do?
surprised. As much as the movie is kind of a love letter to New York, you know,
It very much is.
I mean, Luke has a very like personal relationship with that city and lived there and loves New York, and it kind of spoke to me that Luke couldn't get into a movie that, you know, pays so much homage to this city that he also loves.
Yeah.
I mean, correct me
I
if I'm
love
wrong.
the shit out of New York, and like Brian said, I lived there for a little while, and to the point that Brian makes fun of me for, like, we'll be watching something and I'll be like, oh, those two places are like 90 blocks. Like, we'll watch Cloverfield and I'll be like, yes, they're going to walk 30 blocks under the subway, and they get there in like 10 minutes. It's like, bullshit, fuck you, I'm sorry, no.
And he's talking about movie theaters in New York, and I get envious that I have not been to these theaters because they sound amazing. But that's what I'm saying is like somebody like Luke not being able to get into this movie, which is supposed to be this huge love letter to New York. But I feel like that gets also subsumed to these characters that
I would argue that there are as many different types of experiences of New York and ways to fall in love with it as there are different kinds of people. I mean,
That's granted.
His experience of it seems very different than thing that even I would have personally gone after. I mean, there's a really famous scene where he and Diane Keaton are sitting underneath the Brooklyn Bridge as the sun is first coming up, and it's gorgeous. And they had to actually spend a good amount of money to set it up so that there would be no one around and lights would come on at the exact right moment. And it's amazing. It's an amazing sequence, and you can see how like a guy having an experience like that would go like, yeah, it's like that was a magical moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I would never have found myself in that position because all I could think is you're going to get your ass mugged.
This Manhattan really should have been called White People Problems. I mean, that's basically what it is. It's a movie about fucking white people problems.
Well,
Rich white people problems.
Upper middle class, perhaps.
Richer than my ass.
I don't know, dude. He had a spiral staircase in his Manhattan
that's true.
apartment.
No, that's
like,
true. That's true.
My God.
But it
Also,
is
let me whine as I fuck this 17-year-old.
It is 1979 Manhattan too.
That's
so
true.
that's a
That's
little
true.
different than what's today. But anyway, that was Manhattan. We actually have to try and get through these a little faster.
Oh,
'cause
okay.
We still got
right.
a lot of stuff to do. So what do you want to do next? Do you want to do the Hitchcocks?
Let's play around with some cock. Some
well-
Hitchcock.
Oh God, frighten me there for a minute.
All will hear me and despair.
How many times do I have to explain to you? You're not my type, Brian.
Well, you got that cold sweat on your dick anyway.
Okay,
so.
I don't have a type. That's true.
So, yes, there are 3 Alfred Hitchcock movies that have been released on Blu-ray, I believe, for the first time. And those movies are Notorious, Rebecca, and Spellbound. I guess I'll go ahead and start with Spellbound, because this is actually... I'm a huge Alfred Hitchcock fan, and pretty much my introduction to film outside of the horror genre, which sounds funny, was Hitchcock, because I personally feel that Hitchcock's only made 2 films that could classify as horror films.
It's still weird to me that people largely think of him who don't know a lot about film, or at least aren't like obsessive about it like we are.
Yeah.
Him as a horror director, and really that's, I mean, gothic more than horror.
Well, they
Yeah,
had
or
to-
more thriller.
The thriller genre, in a lot of ways was refined by Hitchcock and created the division between the 2 genres.
Hell,
Because,
he even made some comedies.
yeah, he did. Trouble with Harry is a great black comedy, but yeah, this when I was first getting into films outside of the slasher genre, I will say, not to confuse the issue.
So last year.
Yes. I started watching Hitchcock films, and I fell in love with the way that he plays with angles, the way that he the actors that he would get to be in his films, the way they were shot, and the black and white films looking just as gorgeous as the color movies. It blew me away. And this is actually one that I had never seen, Spellbound, which stars Ingrid Bergman, and
the
she's
most
so
beautiful and beautiful woman, and one of the most incredible actresses who's ever lived, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And here again, proving his ability to work with some of the best talent working at the time, Gregory Peck is the co-star of this film. And basically it's about this institution, this psychiatric mental health clinic that has just hired a new doctor, played by Gregory Peck, and he kind of begins this relationship with Ingrid Bergman, and then there's questions about whether or not he's actually the guy they hired.
Well, something's clearly wrong.
Something's up with this guy.
Get-go. He's having weird reactions to simple, strange things like patterns and fabric.
Yeah, and the color. I'm only going to bring this up.
Oh boy, I know where this is going.
Yeah, he's got this thing with the color white, which is fun. First of all, it's funny to me in a black and white movie because there's a scene where he's like looking around and freaking out at all the stuff that's white, and it's like if you weren't looking at that stuff, we wouldn't know it was white or if it was yellow or we wouldn't fucking know. But
it's like you have a problem with white, and half the time you're going to be pretty freaked out.
Exactly.
Just like Blackjack.
Just like Blackjack. That's where I was going. There is a Dolph Lundgren movie made for TV that John Woo directed called Blackjack, wherein
It's actually fabulous.
It's
by
a
the
lot of
way.
fun.
I'll just say it's one of the best films John Woo's ever directed.
Okay. I've never seen
it's well action wise.
I don't blame you.
I can't believe I
Action
haven't.
action wise, I agree with you.
Wait,
Plot
did it
wise,
have a different name as well?
not that one. I don't think. I don't think Blackjack did. But basically, Dolph Lundgren plays this action hero guy who is afraid of the color white, and it is fucking ridiculous. But anyway,
And as a Nazi, you'd just like to say fuck that guy.
so Ingrid Bergman and Gregory Peck shoot Cyrus in the face, and hold on.
No, that's you.
I'm getting my wires crossed. Oh my goodness. So yeah, basically they go on this. They're trying to figure out what's going on with his past. They want to know if he's actually. Then there's some. They're suspecting he might be a criminal. There's all of this intrigue as you would expect in a Hitchcock film. I really, 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 really enjoyed this film, and I was surprised at how it is very much a Hitchcock film, but more like Vertigo than it is something like even Rear Window.
Well, it feels more like Vertigo because Vertigo has that same passage of like a guy who's caught up in the middle of this mystery of the identity of people around him and of himself, and is kind of just wrapped. He's running through these events without any idea of how to put the brakes on.
Plus, he can't deal with the fact that he's in love with this girl because he can't reconcile it with his own psyche.
Absolutely. It's terrific performances all the way around. Like I said, it's funny because we're only telling you really the first 20 minutes of this film's plot because Hitchcock tends to have several reveals in his films. Like unlike a lot of other people where you work all the way up to the twist at the height of the third act, Hitchcock tends to do a major twist right at the end of the first act. And then there'll be one or two more as the film goes along. And I don't want to even spoil for you the first twist because it's a great twist.
It really is.
You know, Gregory Peck is wonderful in absolutely everything that he's in as well. This is fun to watch play out, and one of the most remarkable things about this movie is there's a hypnotism sequence where he goes and he's remembering this dream that he had because it gets very Freudian at points, talking about if we can decipher this dream, then we can figure out maybe what actually happened to you.
Yeah.
And the dream sequences were done by Salvador Dali.
Unreal.
Yeah, which you can't miss. I mean, if you've ever seen any Dali painting, the moment the sequence starts, you're like, oh yeah, this is Salvador Dali.
And what's so fascinating about that scene is it is the most antithetical Hitchcock moment I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because it feels like suddenly you've been launched into a different movie.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what the hell? And you're right. I didn't know going in that I missed it in the credits that he had done the dream sequences. But you're right. As soon as I saw like the hanging eyes and the weird clocks, I was like, oh, this is Dali.
Yeah, you can't miss it.
This has got to be Dali. And actually, there are some like, even if you're a jaded horror fan and you've been desensitized by everything you've seen lately, there are still some scenes in that dream sequence that are downright ooky.
Yeah, that are very, that
unsettling.
are kind of haunting.
Oof.
Did you get to watch this one?
Yeah, this is very, very creepy, and I think the main thing to take away from this is that if you look up classically beautiful in the dictionary, you will find a picture of Ingrid Bergman next to
God,
it. 'Cause
she's
my God,
such
gorgeous.
a knockout, and it's so nice to see this in Blu-ray where it looks like they might have just made it yesterday, and then you can imagine that she's still out there. You might be able to tap that.
Which is funny because when it started, like the title sequence, it looked really bad.
The titles look really bad, and a couple of shots in the Spellbound. Of the three that came out, Spellbound looks good, mostly good all the way through. Well, we'll get to Notorious next, and we'll talk about it.
From what I've read about these titles and the release of them, I mean, it wasn't an expensive re-release, but it's still the best copy you can get of any of these.
Definitely, it is now, but it's always one of those things that I just wish that studios would give it to Criterion.
Yeah, just let Criterion do it if you're not going to do a good job.
If you're not, because they're going to spend the time and they're going to spend the money to do it as best. I know when I spend, my $25 on a Criterion disc, which is a lot of money to drop on one title, I know I'm getting the best possible version that will ever exist of that movie.
Absolutely.
And that's
until Criterion does another version with whatever technology is next.
Exactly.
Right. I'm not buying all the Blu-rays because they're gonna have those Superman crystals soon.
Cosmic Cube.
Marlon Brando does a commentary on all of them.
Well, you know what? That is one more thing I'll say before we move on to the next film is that there's a really great shot near the end of the movie featuring a revolver, like a first-person perspective of a revolver, that is just really mind-blowing. And it's there's always at least one shot in every Hitchcock film that you're like, wow, that was really cool.
Yeah.
Like it's innovative and it's something that you don't see in other movies. And that's just what I loved about him is he was so playful. Like with his cinematography, he's like, I want to try this and see if it works. And it doesn't always work, but the fact that he's trying to just not give you a what do you call that? A 3-shot where you have just like the 3 people in frame in a medium shot and just keep going until the movie's over. Like, I like that he's like kind of visually playful. That's one of my favorite things about it.
No, I agree, and that is a great shot. I'm glad you brought that up. And you're right. Every movie has usually a lot more than one.
Oh,
but
yeah.
At least one that you can't forget.
That sticks out.
Yeah, that sticks out.
Yeah.
Well, that was Spellbound. The next one we're going to talk about is Notorious.
Notorious.
That just makes me think of Donnie Darko.
We all.
This is a 1946 thriller that was made not too long after he left Britain and first came over to America, if I'm not mistaken, with Cary Grant, Ingrid Bergman again, and Claude Rains. And this is actually a spy thriller.
Again, we're moving into a very somewhat typical Hitchcock, but then also kind of a little bit of a variation for him. And Cary Grant is, of course, one of his favorite leading men. He worked with him, I believe it was 7 times in total. And
North by Northwest probably being their most famous collaboration.
North by Northwest probably their most famous collaboration. He also works with Claude Rains in this one, who is one of my favorite old actors. I love my favorite Universal monster film by far is The Invisible Man.
Okay, I would like to say for the record that every time Claude Rains is with Ingrid Bergman in any sort of mildly romantic way in this film, it fucking freaks me out because I've seen Casablanca like 30 times.
Yes.
What are you doing? Rick is gonna kick your ass.
Rick's gonna hurt.
Where's Victor Laszlo?
But the story here follows Ingrid Bergman, who's Alicia Huberman, a American daughter of a just convicted Nazi spy, and she is reluctantly recruited by an American government agent played by Cary Grant, T.R. Devlin, to infiltrate a group of Nazis who have relocated to Brazil after World War II. And the way they find a way to get her in there is that one of the guys in this group, played by Claude Rains, is a guy who she's known in the past and has made very clear his affections for her in the past, which she had previously spurned.
As well as he's made clear his affections for the Third Reich.
Exactly.
So they blend the two.
Now we see why Brian likes it.
God damn it!
All right,
I invited that one.
I'll let it go now. But almost immediately, she and Cary Grant fall in love with each other. I mean, it's clear they're all over each other, but when he finds out that, in fact, the deal is that she's got to go and pretend to really like this guy or get involved with him, he just turns total cold. Like, okay, we got to cut that shit off because I can't deal with that. I know I couldn't deal with it.
Right.
You really love this girl, and then you're like,
you gotta watch her go
fuck
seduce
this
other
Nazi.
men. Yeah.
And it's a really interesting story. Their chemistry together is so weird because sometimes it's on fire with passion, and other times it's just frozen over completely. I mean, these are watching 2 actors at the height of their talents play off each other in so many different ways. And then poor Claude Rains. I mean, I know he's a Nazi, but you do still feel sorry for that guy.
That ending is heartbreaking. I don't care who you are. That ending is heartbreaking.
Yeah. It's a really solid film. A lot of people don't count it among Hitchcock's best because it's very atypical Hitchcock in some ways, at least as far as the story goes.
It's more political than a lot of his stuff. Not that he didn't do political before, but it's... I mean, there's a very definite, like... xenophobic type thing going on in the movie.
And the romance is odd for Hitchcock as well. It's a strange, like I said, that's the for me was the key to this film is that relationship really.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What do you guys think?
I love
like
Notorious.
I think it's a lot of fun. I think it starts off great with their meeting at the party and then him going out with her while she's drunk driving and their little run-in with the cop. And
Once
there's
again,
a great shot that Brian and I noticed where as they're leaving, to go drunk driving essentially, and Cary Grant is sober and is well aware of what's going on. Ingrid Bergman is like swinging her pint glass around, and he just very casually takes it from her hand and places it on the chest of a passed out woman.
Yeah, she's like passed
walks
over the
out of the
arm of
room.
the couch and creates
Just
like this.
that goes right there.
She creates like this platform of her chest, and he just sits it, and he doesn't even like. It's not even like where he thinks about it for a second, looks
No,
around.
no,
He's
it's
just
just
like,
it's very smooth, just like that's
that's
where
where
that goes.
Yeah.
And once again, we're talking about old movies, you know, being the best for depictions of drinking. He he says at one point, they're talking about being drunk, and he goes, "Oh, the serious drinking hasn't started yet," which, by the way, is my new personal mantra.
Oh yes. Anytime anyone comes in, the serious drinking hasn't started yet.
Indeed, but one of the things I really there's a shot.
That's like, the line I picture at the end of any given bacchanalia at your house on New Year's Eve, when like the giant "When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth" banner falls down as you're roaring into the ceiling with your Four Locos duct taped to your hand, except it says the really serious drinking hasn't even started yet.
What kills me is it sounds like you're exaggerating, but only because I don't have that banner. Like that's pretty. Everything else is pretty spot on. I will get that banner. But yes, one of my favorite shots of all of Hitchcock's movies is in Notorious. There's a shot, it's a party scene where she's kind of already infiltrated Claude Rains' house, and she's working with Cary Grant to try and figure out the secret that they're hiding there. And there's a shot during this party scene that starts at the top of this grand staircase, and it just zooms in, and it keeps zooming, and it keeps going, and all the things are happening, independent of the shot. Nothing is waiting. I mean, the only thing that's waiting is Ingrid Bergman, and she's talking to people, and it keeps getting tighter and tighter and tighter. It gets down to her closed hand behind her back, and then she just barely opens it, and you see she's got a key. Yeah. So you realize that in this whole room full of people, nothing else matters but that key. And he shows you the whole scale of the room before zeroing in on that fact. And then you can't take your eyes off, what's that key for? Wait, what? And it's just such an easy way to create suspense, but it's one that few people can do as eloquently as Alfred Hitchcock can.
Now, I love that there's one thing that's funny about this film and shows how dated it is in some ways. It's just that there's a part of the plot is about Russians smuggling uranium, which in the context of the film means that almost everyone would die of cancer within a year. Right. They're like pouring it in their hands going, I think this is uranium.
Yeah, which if they weren't already going to die of cirrhosis, I think it would have been a bigger concern.
Yeah, even the radioactivity was like, I'm not going in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That body is too filled with booze.
Now,
I was just going to say, while Spellbound looked pretty good, Notorious doesn't fare quite as well. No. The real changes in particular, you really notice, the film gets a little wobbly, and there's some weird contrast issues going on. And, maybe that's just down to the elements that were available, but it's clear that they didn't spend a lot of time cleaning this up.
It's
one of those things that it's kind of like when you take the Windex and the rag and you do a good once over.
It still looks better than any existing DVD
Sure, it looks fine.
It
looks perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, you're not going to get mad that you spent money on all it does.
No, and thankfully these do have at least some special features. So you're not getting bare bones discs for your money either.
And I feel like it's going to be a while before we see much nicer special editions of a lot of these, especially of these. I mean, certainly there's got to be a Vertigo one right around the corner.
You would certainly
they put out a really nice North by Northwest, I think.
North by Northwest is gorgeous.
Which is amazing.
Just gorgeous. They did spend a lot of time to make that look good.
Yeah, they absolutely did. So imagine we're going to get all the big ones first, and then they'll filter back around eventually to re-releasing some of these that are still, I think, just as good in some examples as those more famous ones, but are lesser known to the point where they're not going to put all
that's a situation where it actually benefits you to not be an enormous Hitchcock fan, because if the movies you've seen by him are his big ones, then you're in luck, because you get the beautiful North by Northwest, and I think Criterion's put out
Lady Vanishes.
Lady Vanishes, which is amazing.
But if you're somebody like me, who one of my favorite Hitchcock movies is Rope, and it's going to be a while before I get a Rope Blu-ray.
Unfortunately.
But, the last one of this set, and we just talked about Notorious, by the way, the last one of the set is Rebecca. Now, this is my favorite of these three. It's a 1940 noir thriller that's based on Daphne du Maurier's novel of the same name. And by the way, if you've never read any of her stuff, she is one of the creepiest Gothic writers ever. Her stuff is wonderful, and Hitchcock actually adopted quite a bit of her stuff for the screen and for the small screen, specifically on his Alfred Hitchcock Presents television show.
Huh.
But the film here is a Gothic tale, once again, about, well, let's say this. The titular character is not actually in the film. She is the dead wife of Laurence Olivier's character.
Who, once again, working with some of the greatest actors of the time. Yeah. Now he's got Laurence Olivier in the movie.
Joan Fontaine. Maxim de Winter. He's a super rich guy who owns this gigantic, ridiculous mansion called Manderley. And it's just, it's huge. It's Gothic. It's enormous. No one should need a place that big.
It almost feels like a Hammer film setting in a lot of ways.
It does. Now, Joan Fontaine plays a young woman who they never give her name, strangely enough. I didn't realize that until I was just reading this. Yeah. But who is just she's an orphan. She's a paid companion to a wealthy woman, and she meets in Monte Carlo Laurence Olivier, and they fall in love. And I guess it's what they did back then. He's like, yeah, you'll do. Let's get married.
Marriage now.
So they do whirlwind marriage, whirlwind romance. They go back to Manderley, and nobody wants her there. All the servants, especially the head maid, Mrs. Danvers, played by Judith Anderson, and one of the creepiest fucking character roles
kind of
ever.
A dick.
Totally. She is does all but flat out tell her, look, get the fuck out, because the woman who was here before you, who he was married to, Rebecca, she is the most amazing woman who's ever lived, and she's dead. She died in a boat accident, and no one here is happy about you being here. Poor Joan Fontaine, we'll just say, because she doesn't have her name. She is such a little mousy girl. Yeah. She's gorgeous, but she's just afraid of everything.
She's frail.
And she's very frail, and she wants nothing more but to make her relationship work with Maxim, because she does. She loves him with all her heart. But everything in the house, everything that happens, everything anyone says about her is always directed about Rebecca.
Yeah.
And she becomes more and more convinced that Maxim is still hopelessly in love with his wife, and nothing she can ever do will compare with that.
And it's funny because a lot of people have described this as a supernatural romance. And what's funny about that is the ghost, quote unquote, of this woman is really just kept alive and really only appears in the actions of other people.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a situation where it's an actual, haunting necessarily, but she is plagued by this woman, this maid who's trying desperately to keep Rebecca's memory alive. Yeah. And at one point, she even, tries to convince her to kill herself, which is one of the darkest, creepiest scenes in any Hitchcock film.
You will sit right up on the edge of your couch and be like, what the fuck is gonna happen?
Right, because it's a combination of the maid lady whose name I keep forgetting, Mrs. Danvers.
Ms. Danvers.
Just being so overbearing and so cruel and so manipulative, and this poor woman who is just so feeble-minded almost, to the point where, she considers it. You can see it in her eyes that she's considering jumping, and it's just You really do sit on the edge of your seat because you realize that combination of character traits could lead to her leaping to her death.
Now, one of the reasons this is my favorite of the three, and one of my very favorite Hitchcock films, period. I do love Gothic stuff. I do. The classic Gothic doomed romance stuff, mm-hmm. I think is absolutely terrific when it's done really, really well. And this is maybe the high point for it ever.
Sure.
But the twist in here is one of the, oh my god, I so totally didn't see that coming.
Yeah, it's
of
great.
All time in film.
Oh.
And it's not like they do it and you go, that doesn't make sense. No, it totally makes sense. You just will never ever see it coming at all. Whoa, that is fucked up. And then there's a second twist even on top of that to sucker punch you in the end. And one of the most phenomenal, big, expensive set pieces Hitchcock probably filmed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you talk about the memorable shots of the film. And I can't say anything about it specifically.
Yeah, you don't want to ruin anything.
Because it would literally give away the end of the film. But there are things going on in there, just shot after shot, that you're like, oh my god, that had to have been. Considering when they made this, it must have been a giant nightmare to do.
Absolutely.
This ain't Ron Howard in Backdraft.
Right, exactly. And one of the great things about this movie, if you are a Hitchcock fan or you're somebody that's interested in him as an artist, this is definitely one of the movies you have to watch for a number of reasons. One of which is that this is his first American film. And this is the first film, and I think the only, in fact, for which he won a Best Picture Oscar and yet he didn't get to accept the award because, unfortunately, a lot of his American films he worked with David O. Selznick, who is one of the most notoriously controlling
Yeah.
bastards. I don't know how else to really phrase it, of the industry, and he was constantly telling Hitchcock, "Oh, you should change this, you should do this, you should," to the point that Hitchcock was actually doing a lot of editing in camera.
Yeah.
So that there was no way that Selznick could get a hold of it and re-edit it because it was all in camera stuff. Although Selznick did eventually do a cut of the film that Hitchcock was just completely disappointed with. He changed a lot of the dialogue and a lot of the music, and I would love to see it. I don't know if it's available on this particular Blu-ray, but I would love to see if there are any alternate versions or alternate scenes even, or alternate music to kind of give us an impression of what Hitchcock's original version was going to look like.
There's an isolated music and effects track, but I don't think that's what you're looking for. It comes
There's
with
a making of and some screen tests. But...
Yeah. A special thing specifically about a featurette about Daphne du Maurier, who once again is an author that is totally worth your time, worth looking forward to. There's the original radio play from 1938 with Orson Welles.
Orson Welles is so good on the radio. It's
he really was.
Ridiculous.
In fact, there's 3 different radio play versions apparently. So, wow, check that out. A lot of bang for your buck if you're a huge fan of this film, which I absolutely.
And the transfer's pretty good on this one, I thought.
I thought so too. Yeah. This is always going to be in my favorite of this style of films and one of my favorite Hitchcocks.
And another piece of trivia is that the house, Manderley, they looked and looked and looked all over the East Coast, couldn't find one they liked, so it's actually a miniature.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, why is that trivia? Because for the first, hour of the movie, it doesn't look like a goddamn miniature. Like, you will be fooled.
Yeah, it was very surprising to me when I found that out as well.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we should take a break and then we'll come back with a lightning round, finish off all our remaining titles.
The lightning round!
But before we do that,
the giveaways!
And guess what we're giving away?
I don't think I could guess.
Those last 3 movies we just talked about.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
Actually giving away Blu-ray
Sexy.
copies of Spellbound, Notorious, and Rebecca. I mean, Jesus Christ, talk about a great freebie.
Yeah.
I mean,
This is good shit. I mean, I like, even if I have problems with the transfer on Notorious, like, I love the fact that I have these 3 great Hitchcock movies on Blu-ray, and the fact that we're giving them to you is, I mean, you really should be thanking us. You owe us. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm just gonna throw it out there.
And it's a good thing you don't have an Amazon wish list. No. Seriously, don't send him anything.
No, please don't.
Anyway, so with this one, I'll be just writing Alfred Hitchcock somewhere, and basically first come, first serve with who gets what titles. So there'll be 3 winners. What you want to do is send me, I saw you post Alfred Hitchcock in this story or wherever it appears in the comments on another blog there, not me talking about it on remote viewing. Got a couple people who sent me you talked about it in remote viewing? No, god damn it. Be pretty sneaky if that's what I was doing, but that's never what I'm going to do.
Not quite getting it.
So, and the code word will be...
Serious drinking.
Serious drinking will be the code
Alright.
word. So send me the code word, where you saw it, and and which one you want.
Yes.
And don't forget, once I tell you win, that means be prepared to send me your address, because the sooner you send me your full name and address, the sooner you're going to get your swag.
We will turn that shit around very quickly.
We will, or I will.
Well, yes, he will.
I live right near a post office, so it works out okay.
And I never leave my house, so it really does work out pretty well.
That's true. This is actually a simulcast from
Yeah, I'm on Skype right now.
Remote viewing is filmed in front of a dead studio audience.
Yes. They weren't dead when we got here.
We have a cat, so...
Yeah, he's asleep, though. Not
Oh,
dead.
he's so
Don't worry.
cute.
But anyway, let's take a break and we'll be back with a lightning round to get through the rest of these titles. Yay!